Welcome to Kim Talks Resilience, where we share stories of insight and inspiration in life, love, and business with resilient women from around the world. Speaking with authors, entrepreneurs, founders, and coaches to learn their strategies for a more resilient life so we can all build the life we love. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. Former mayor and businesswoman Debbie Peterson is the author of 2 Amazon best-selling books in her Integrity 101 series. The first book, The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California beach town, is the story of the corruption she uncovered as mayor. Number 2 is City Council 101, the insider's guide for new council members. Her mission is to equip everyday people to be we the people in our government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So this is going to be an awesome. I'm super excited because I think you're the first former mayor I've had on the show.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad to be the first. I was also the first directly elected female mayor of my town. So you're in good company.
That's awesome. Well, we have lots in common. I've never done the political side. I've had lots of political conversations, but I've never been in politics. But we have similar kind of work histories and such, and I think similar missions in just trying to leave the world a little bit better of a place. What I like to do here is I like to start with the big question, and everybody goes, ah. The big question is, who is Debbie? Can you share?
I'm going to say that I am an entrepreneur because I've done a whole lot of things and I've never competed with anyone but myself. And I guess that must be a pretty high bar because I've done fairly well with that. I moved to Great Britain when I was, how old was I? I was about 21. I had my degree in communication and I wanted to live abroad. And I'd done lots of volunteer work with the Church of Scotland. And so moved to the UK thinking I'd work for a couple of years, ended up starting a business and became the Young Scottish Personality of the Year and a little bit of a celebrity. And I then decided after about 13 years, sold the business, got married, moved back to California, where I'm from. And we had a son, and that's why I moved back. I wanted to educate him in a different kind of atmosphere than he might have had in Britain, either really bad public schools or, in my opinion, awful private schools. But forgive me for that one, any of you who are listening in the UK, and unless, of course, you agree with me. And while I was here, I became a real estate broker, worked as a team with my mom. And she had helped me with my business in Great Britain, too. She's an auditor by trade. And then after a few years, my neighbors were saying, well, Debbie, you've got the redevelopment piece. You worked with setting up, launching companies in Great Britain with new entrepreneurs for the UK government. You've got the PR bit and you're in a small town and we need all of that. Why don't you run for office? So my son was still young. So I instead asked if I could be appointed to the Planning Commission, did that for 4 years, chaired that, and then became a council member and then was elected as mayor and went back to the council after that for a few years. So that's it in a nutshell. Now I'm authoring. Now I'm writing. That was what I really wanted to do for my last career.
Your last career. You know what? I think we're about the same age. So my guess is this is not the last. It's you probably will do this and then you'll have one more after this. I don't feel that you're going to slow down.
Yet, though.
Yeah, it presents itself. You know what's funny is I think you and I we drew the same kind of trajectory card because you went to Scotland and became an American in Scotland as the Scottish Personality of the Year. That's hilarious. Because here in Canada, I have worked the red carpets. I got selected for a TV show for people in Calgary to be the Calgarian. And got both the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award for
congratulations
and the Alberta Centennial Award when it turned out in 2005. And I'm just this kid from Kansas, so I think sometimes
it's really funny that you say a kid from Kansas, and of course, all you have to do is drive really far north, and you get to Calgary from Kansas. But I grew up in Kansas, well,
Where
until I
about?
was 9. From my
Where
family were
about?
from Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas, and all over small towns in Kansas.
Oh, I'm from Wichita. You see, there's Debbie. I'm thinking that maybe like there's somehow, yeah.
We were
But
supposed to meet.
absolutely, we're supposed to meet. Okay, so you got elected to the planning committee. You've got all this experience. You've worked in government, which I commend because I probably would not do well in government. I, I when I have an opinion on something, everybody knows it, and that's not really the way governments work. See, most people they kind of hold their cards a little bit closer to the chest. Let's go into where you're at today because I really want to talk to the women over 40. We are going through this incredible shift. You know, the pandemic was hard, folks, but my
Mhm.
gosh, it has brought so many good things with it. It forced a lot of us to learn certain pieces of technology that now we use fluently. And it has shifted the world, I believe, from the industrial age where we were so
Mhm.
that brawn versus brain into I believe we're moving more into almost like a renaissance age because AI can do all of our other work. Just ask chat GPT. But the reality is it can't do the creative space. It can't do the mentorship, the sponsorship, the leadership. So walk me through what you're doing today and let's just go through that, and then I've got tons of questions for you. I am just enthralled. You are so fun. Awesome.
Thank you. Um, you know what? You're talking about how AI can't be it can't be creative, and I think the other thing is it can't be a woman. And I, I, you and I were talking a little bit earlier about writing in anthologies, and I just completed one called "Wickedly Smart Women." And as I wrote in that, I wrote about just one chapter on the corruption that I found as the mayor of my town. And I remember saying to the woman who was curating it, "Well, we're supposed to be listening to intuition." What was it? Taking action and transforming the world. And I said, well, I'm not sure that people are interested in my message, transforming the world. She said, hold on a minute. Don't you want more women in office? And I said, yes. And she said, wouldn't that change the world? And she's absolutely right. Sometimes people, as you know, because you do a lot of consulting, sometimes people from the outside can see what it is you're offering when you yourself don't even value it enough. And so what I have done is I've written about my experience as a mayor, and I uncovered really an unbelievable amount of corruption. I live in an idyllic part of California. I call it Kansas at the beach, actually, because it's a small, friendly, unpretentious little town where people are very straightforward and pleasant and don't think too highly of themselves. And people just love it here, but it's pretty much undiscovered. We're on Highway 1, right between LA and San Francisco. So we're kind of inaccessible, believe it or not. There aren't really good main roads that come straight here, and we're too far from anywhere for anyone to pay attention. And so the corruption has just been unbelievable. And part of it is because nobody knows about us. Nobody wants to pay any attention from any distance. And part of it is because we're so busy just loving paradise that we're not paying attention. Or we're so busy trying to make a living in paradise because the cost of living is so high that we can't pay attention. So what I discovered as I was writing that one chapter was that it was men and women equally who were coming to me and talking to me about the corruption and working with me to expose it and take it down. But the people who were actually taking the action in government positions were women. And I thought, oh my gosh, I hadn't realized that, but it was women CEOs. And that goes to some of your previous comments about business. I really strongly advocate for business people to get into local government, but particularly for women to get into local government. And because we have specific gifts and skill sets that are really helpful in serving our communities in local government. So I'll stop there now because I've probably rabbited on enough just now.
No,
But
that's awesome. I want to know, so what are those special gifts that benefit women in government?
I was so amazed when I started to research what I had discovered. I thought, is this just specific to where I am that this is happening with women, or is this a phenomenon? And I started to research and I realized the United Nations has done a lot of work on it. It is a phenomenon and it is happening around the world. And the message of democracy, the message of we the people, that our government belongs to us and is accessible to us, or should be, and should be overseen by each of us, that message resonates all over the world. And the specific traits that women have are they don't tend to go over the top, as you were saying, with their opinions when they are in local or in office, in government office. But they do advocate really firmly for the things they really believe in. And as a rule, women were the original progressives back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. They didn't have a vote, but they were out there making things change. They were the ones who brought the vaccines. They were the ones who brought support for widows and orphans. They were the ones who made sure that women had women jailers in prisons. They did those things that women have a heart for. And the other thing that women do around the world is they work together. Even when they disagree vehemently, they will work together. And so they can, we say cross the aisle. I always say there is no aisle because most of us are somewhere in the middle anyway. What they found in Nigeria was in places where there were more women on the board, they had better water supplies. The water development was better. They found in Norway, even though Norway has, I think, 45% represented by women in government positions, in elected positions, they found that the childcare services were better where women were in the majority. And the women seemed to be able to take things and run with them and get them done in a way that men simply haven't been doing.
And that's interesting because we just did an article in our magazine, Resilient Women magazine, and it was for International Women's Day, right? A woman invented the fire escape. A woman invented the lifeboat. A woman invented heat in a car. A woman invented the refrigerator. When we look at these, it's that true statement of, necessity is the mother of all invention. We waited till a building burned down before we realized that we needed to provide an accessible avenue for somebody to escape that building. We waited for ships to sink before we provided safety for those people. And it is interesting you talk about that. And I do agree that we are in, and this is the beauty of what has come of cell phones. And by the way, everybody who, got all mad that Syrian refugees, remember that all that crap from a decade ago, Syrian refugees, and they were all coming with phones. I can't live without this. Can anybody live without your phone? I can't even remember a phone number anymore. I remember being a kid, being able to crate call. I never crate called anybody, but being able to crate call people because I knew their phone number and order them a pizza or ask if their refrigerator is running. Come on, folks. This is essential. But this is powerful enough now that women can run businesses from in third world countries. And that's why we're seeing the evolution of all these countries. So we're equalizing the playing field. But
wow. I love all that. I love that. Yeah.
Did you know that the lifeboats are I research.
I have no idea. I'm going to have to get that article and I'm going to print it on my face. I'm going to share it everywhere. That's incredible.
I'm actually
Women's History Month, International Women's History Month. I think it's certainly International Women's Day earlier this week. So that's a really important message right now.
And what's interesting It's also on the 19th is Mother's Day, I think in Australia. Like it's March is a good month. It's a good month.
Yeah.
It's a good month. Um, so let's go through. So this is inspiring women. Okay, first of all, you have a very good position within real estate, and I understand this. I understand. You know, I literally had to. I'm one of these people that my family knew that I could generate high six figures in real estate. And so, in order for me to move into where I wanted to go, which is this space, creating a platform, I love Johnny Carson. I had to literally kind of kill off my business. Otherwise, it would not have allowed me because there would have been, oh, but mom. And come on, folks, everybody's grown here. Everybody's grown. Everybody go away. Mom wants to do her own thing. So, and it's funny because by separating my identity into this new identity, we're no longer comparing because I did really well in real estate. It's over a $7 million brand.
That's
And,
wonderful.
but that's hard to walk away from.
And it's also hard to do in Calgary. I think home prices are a little bit lower. Real estate prices are a little bit lower. So 7 million in Calgary is probably worth about 14, 15 million at least in California.
Oh, easy. Yeah. Well, when I started,
that's phenomenal.
Thank you. When I started, it was $136,000 was the first little house I sold in 1999.
Oh, I've done better than that. I've sold ones for less than that.
Oh, there you go. There you
go.
But
remember, it was 25 years ago, and so that was it was a lot of money in 25 years ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's go through. There's a lot of women listening to you that are sitting here going, I don't want to go back to my corporate job. There's something greater out there for me. But we've all been taught to be polite, be courteous, sit up straight, know the rules of engagement. And we also tend to play it safe. What are some of the advice, some of the personal things that you've come through in order to move you in the direction of that next step in your life? Can you share with us some of that grit?
Yeah, rules of engagement is such a great term because I think one of the reasons that women succeed is because we don't know the rules of engagement. We've never been members of the good old boys club. And so we just do our thing. And it comes back to competition as well. We don't compete with everybody else because, well, we can't as women. We just have to do the best we can. And it's usually a lot better than some of our other gender counterparts. and
Oh, these poor guys. I feel bad for them, but you know what? They've had the world for the last few hundred years. I think it's time.
And I actually, it's when I started doing my podcast, I have a podcast called Corruption Chronicles, where I have people come on and talk about the corruption they found and how they fixed it. I like to always have a solution to the problem. And so I guess that would be number one, have a solution to the problem. For me, now that I'm writing, and I haven't even said anything about what I've written except about, well, you mentioned it, but that's something I wanted to do starting in college. I loved to write. I knew that in high school. I started in journalism in college. Then I switched my major to radio TV, but I hated having to stick jacks and things everywhere. It was all about, cords and jacks and electronic stuff. And that totally bored me. And so then I moved into public relations and ended up with a degree in communication. My subject was public relations, but I had a little bit of everything by then. So the reason I did not go into journalism, even though my first love really was writing, and you get to do as much of that as you want to in PR, but the reason I didn't do it is because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to produce consistently. And that's very intriguing to me looking back at that, because I was winning state awards in high school as the editor of my high school newspaper, and you had to be able to, they'd give you a subject, some information, and you'd have to write a news article then and there, and I was number one. Well, actually, my co-editor and I both kept being number one in that thing. And I look at that and I say, why was I afraid I couldn't produce? And I don't know. I still don't have the answer, and I don't really care that much about it now. I don't think it's terribly significant. But what's significant is that's what I really always wanted to do. And it's not that I didn't do other things I wanted to do. As you said, things show up. I found things that I didn't know I wanted to do. I hated business in college. I thought it was so boring, and accounting, everyone said, was so difficult, and computers, they were up all night on these horrible mainframe things. And I was so not interested in business. I thought business sounded like the most boring thing in the world. And I'll say the same thing about politics. I still hate politics. I don't do office politics very well. I don't do any kind of politics very well because I want to get things done. And I can't be bothered with all the rest of the nonsense that goes along with it. Let's just do the job, okay?
Yep.
So I've got a real production line orientation. But and so I guess what advice streams from that? Well, one thing is, I didn't completely answer one of your questions previously, and one thing is to keep the doors open. Keep an open mind, keep learning new things, and you'll probably find that you had all kinds of biases that really didn't steer you in a way that you might have wanted to go. So try to keep an open mind and keep the bias out of it, or at least be cognizant of the bias and explore it. And the other thing I didn't respond to earlier was, why should maybe business women go into politics? And the reason is because when you're sitting in a government position, everybody expects you to manage their money. And in the United States, we pay on average per person over $500,000 of taxes in a lifetime. And you say then you have a husband and kids and a mother and brothers and siblings and sisters and kids. And how many millions of dollars in your family have you handed over to someone and you've paid no attention to how they manage it? And the whole purpose of it is to provide you with services, health, and safety, and to provide for your happiness. In the American Constitution, George Washington said happiness, and your quality of life. And yet we pay no attention. Well, women, as we've already mentioned here, women pay attention, and they pay attention to those really important life things that make a difference to how we enjoy or don't enjoy our lives, even how we survive and thrive. And business women in particular, if they're entrepreneurs, if they're good at what they're doing, they understand cash flow, they understand a budget, they understand profit, and they can see red flags as they arise because they're paying attention to them in their businesses. And that kind of training is available to them, and they're usually taking it up. And I think especially as women, because it's harder for us, we have to learn those things. And so if you then transfer that to being an elected representative, you can so much better represent people if you are able to spot the red flags and ask the right questions and make sure that the red flags are taken care of.
Very well said. Before we jump to talking about your books, I do want you to share, if you're open to it, a moment of resiliency that if you hadn't have dug deep, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
The one that comes to mind was really probably in the United States, not our most recent, I would say it's before COVID was 2008 when everything crashed. In May 2007, all of a sudden, I noticed that we couldn't get real estate loans anymore. It was, I think, May 25th. I remember the day because it was so bizarre. All of a sudden, nobody could get a loan anymore, and we couldn't figure out why can't people buy houses. And that was a really difficult time. I was single at the time. My former husband was in the real estate business. I was in the real estate business. And all of a sudden, I think most realtors went to about 25% of their normal income. I didn't drop as low as that, but certainly I believe it's probably about 50%. And so when you go, that's a big change. And And so I would say that was my moment of resilience. And I was determined, absolutely determined, that I was not going to lose my investment property. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to make sure, come hell or high water, I was going to hang on to it, because I knew that my investment property would be a lifeline in the future. And it has turned out to be. And so that is one thing I would encourage people to do, is invest in real estate. I've always invested in real estate. I don't like the stock market any more than I like politics, because it's so emotion driven, and it goes up, it goes down, and of course current events influence it, like when banks in Silicon Valley go bust. But it is on an ordinary day just so incredibly driven by the news, and honestly I think it's driven by men's emotions, because they don't acknowledge them or realize they're there, and so they just act on them more than women, because we know what's there most of the time. And so I've sent myself down a rabbit hole here, and I can't remember what your question was, but one of the things I would do is encourage women to invest in real estate and then hang on to it come hell or high water. And
Hell or high
that
water.
was my point of resilience.
Yeah, and you had a tangible that you really like. I get it. We didn't get nearly impacted by the '08 crash here
Mm-hmm.
in Canada, just because we have a different banking system. But it's there. I mean, that definitely, it was pretty darn scary when it was like pre-COVID kind of quiet for those that were
Mm-hmm.
in the real estate world, because it was like all of a sudden everything just, the day the earth stood still kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about your books. You have how many books in total you have been published now?
4.
Four.
And I've
Okay.
written 5. One of them I wrote for the Scottish Development Agency. They asked me to write a book in their series of great Scots women in business. And so I interviewed some of the top female entrepreneurs in Scotland. It was a blast. I loved doing it. And let me tell you, the most controversial thing anybody said, and this would have been about 30 years ago, it was appalling, absolutely appalling. She said that she knew she was successful. She knew she could put her head above the parapet when she had 30,000 pounds in the bank. And they would not publish the book because it was so controversial for a woman to talk about how difficult it was to be a woman in business. And I said, well, fine, don't publish it, but you need to pay me because I wrote it and you commissioned me to write it. And they paid me. They probably paid me off. But that was the controversy 25 or 30 years ago, I guess about 30 years ago in Great Britain. And so that book never was published. I keep thinking maybe I'll go back to it. Then at a very young age, when I owned my cookie company in Scotland and London, I wrote the California Cake and Cookie Cookbook. And looking back now, it sold much better than I realized. I think we sold 3,000 copies, but Britain's not that huge, not as huge a country as the United States or Canada. And it sold in Harrods and Fortnum and Mason and Barnes and Noble and Border Books, and it did quite well. So I did my California Cake and Cookie Cookbook, which was a lot of fun, and taste testing was the best part. And then didn't write another book, and had planned to, once my son went off to college, had planned to continue as a real estate broker, but stopped doing local government after about 15 years. I planned after 10 years, but I stayed 5 more to get rid of the corruption, or to try to get rid of the corruption. And I wasn't able to get rid of all of the corruption. And I realized that I was beat, and that the best thing I could do would be to write about it. So I resigned from my council position and wrote my book, The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California Beach Town. It is a true story of the corruption I found and how people fixed it, and what we couldn't fix, and what the FBI are still investigating. And at some point, I think it will be on the screen in one form or another. And then I wrote a couple of follow-on books. The first one is City Council 101, how Insider's Guide for New Council Members, because I found that most people who are sitting on boards in local government have no idea what their roles and responsibilities are, and so all kinds of things gets by them. And and that's true of other boards as well. I was really fortunate. I was mentored by the chairman of a international bank, UK bank, and he taught me that the most important thing to do on a board is to ask questions. And he also taught me how to look at the accounts. You don't have to be an accountant or an auditor, but he said, here's where the red flags are. Here are the things you should be asking questions about, and don't stop until your question is answered satisfactorily. And that's what a good board member does. A good board member speaks up. A good board member doesn't go along to get along, because then how are you possibly serving anybody except for the board or yourselves, or corruption at the worst. And so, and then I wrote my third book, which is coming out shortly, is We the People 101. And I've combined them all into an Integrity 101 series, and I'll write other 101s to do with integrity as we go along. But We the People 101 is set up to equip ordinary, everyday people in the same way that I equipped council members in my City Council 101, to equip them to actually get involved and to know how to do it and to have some confidence in doing it. I've also got an online course called Double Dias, Adventures in Local Government. And that it pretty much covers the second two books. It's kind of a how-to, but all three of those will fast track so that if you want to do it, you can immediately be effective. For me, it took probably 6 years to figure it all out. And because there's no playbook for these things, there's no job description. It's very limited. You have to be a certain age, you have to live in a community, and you have to not have a felony, and that's about it. And,
Yep. Yep.
so yeah,
A good
so that's the book.
a good way to get there is also volunteering.
Yes.
Volunteer. That's how we got my husband and I received the Diamond Jubilee Award and the Centennial Award, was just because we were so active in volunteering. So if you're out there and you don't feel that right now is the time to take on the mantle of recognized leadership in your community, step into the volunteerism space, because what is it? It's something like less than 30% of adult Americans volunteer in the United States. So if you are a business person, you're already ahead of 70% of what you would deem your competition, just by being present.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you know what? It was never for distribution, but this is my little Kim's Sweets and Treats cookbook
Oh my
that I
goodness.
did years ago for all my clients.
I'll
So
show you something. Go ahead. I'll show you mine when you're done.
no. So yeah, no, I'm dying now. So you said you did cakes and cookies. I did sweets and treats.
Yeah,
No
this
bake
is the California Cake and Cookie Cookbook, but what's really interesting to me is look how similar the designs are.
Oh,
Isn't that totally bizarre?
no, I put mine on a little easel so you could set it in the kitchen, and then I put these. Oh, here, I'll show you one of my favorite cards in here. Here it is. So we put all these vintage 50s in. This
Oh,
one, folks,
how
says
wonderful.
that while I was running today, I heard someone clapping. It was just my thighs cheering me on.
Oh,
So
we had a wonderful, I had it published by a young Scottish publisher. I think it was one of her first books. And she had this wonderful young cartoonist who
that is
did
awesome.
the great. This is the one where you see the guy. He's been eating poppy seed cake in New York, and the cop stops him and breathalyzes him, and he's over the limit because he's been eating poppy seeds.
Oh, that is hilarious. You know
Yeah,
what? I'm just thinking that you're a sister from another mother, right? So I'm just
I
like going,
think we
how
are.
are we so much
Isn't
alike?
it weird when that happens? And it happens across generations and centuries, even sometimes. It's quite a
It's,
bizarre happening.
and I will tell you, it happens more when you're willing to get out of your own way
Hmm.
and just go for it. Get out there. Because I find the more that you're living and working and speaking within your your I, the authenticity, the real of who you are, you tend to attract more
Mm,
people that are real with you. So I do have one comment when you were talking earlier on the paper you wrote, and that you didn't know why you didn't move forward,
mm,
and that it was that concern of consistently cranking out the same. That actually a lot of that goes back into, kind of that imposter syndrome, that can we do it as good, right? That fear
mhm.
of, are we was this a fluke, or is this really who I am? And I think
Right.
that a lot of women, we sit here and go, it's gotta be a fluke because, trust me, folks, there is no such thing as luck. After you're born, that's your luck. Luck is something that you have no control. After you're born, luck is literally when opportunity meets action. And this is really critical.
Mhm,
What we're hearing from Debbie is Debbie has had opportunity and at times created that opportunity and then taken action. And a lot of people sit and talk and they don't take action. So, I think that's what I've learned today the most in talking with you, Debbie, is just take action. Just do it.
mhm.
If you sit on the sidelines, you don't have any room.
No, everybody's on the sidelines. It's very crowded. So you've got to get out there. And I've got a whole page of notes on things that you've said. Fascinating. I love it. Luck is when opportunity meets action. And absolutely, just do it. Just do it. And it doesn't mean that you start a business without raising enough money. It doesn't mean that you start a business without doing a business plan. It doesn't mean that you don't think it over carefully and keep your day job until your marketing is complete and your money's in place. It doesn't mean that you do stupid things. It means that you take educated risks, I would say. Take educated risks.
Absolutely. You know, and look realistically at, where you're at. Can you do with a little less in order to gain a lot more?
Hmm.
So that's the big one. Sometimes that, transition can be a wee bit uncomfortable. But you know what? Like we all told our kids when they were growing up, they come and say, "Oh, this hurts or that aches." It's like those are growing pains. Nothing comes easy. Nothing comes easy. Those are just growing pains. You'll be okay. It's not going to kill you. So, Debbie, can you share with us all of your socials, where we can find you, how we can follow you, or stalk you, or
Please, yeah, stalk me, stalk me. Yeah, please do follow me. One of the things we were talking about writing and being international bestsellers, and one of the things about that is if you care about someone or you care about the message, the most important thing you can do is to like it, to follow it, to comment, to share it. Because, for instance, in stopping corruption, the single most important thing that individuals can do, and it's the easiest thing of all, is make both people and perpetrators aware of the consequences. And that's so simple. You just hit like on social media. You just hit follow. You just and people become aware, and that in itself can change the world, as we know now. And but it can change bad things like corruption too. So I am at debbiepeterson.com, DEBBIE Peter. Well, you can see it on the screen here, PETERSON.com. You can link to everything there. You can see the podcast, Corruption Chronicles. You can link to Amazon to find the books. You can buy the online course. I've got it on sale right now. It's $97. Normally they sell for about $397, but I want it to be accessible. It's not about making money. It's about making the world a better place. So um, all of those things there. If you want to buy the book, Amazon, you probably can get it in your local bookstore as well. Down here in California, if you go to the library and you ask for it, they'll buy it on Amazon, ship it to you, and then you return it to the library when you're done. So there are a lot of easy ways to get it.
I want to point out that you're a pro no matter where you show up, aren't you? Because you showed
Mhm.
up prepared at this podcast. You knew where you wanted to go. And I love the fact that you had everything ready and to share. I have to tell you, because this is the number one thing I talk to people about is being prepared, because that's literally half the battle. I just think that there's so much that we could learn from you, Debbie. I really appreciate your time. Um, will you share a quote that inspires you, something to close out the show with a bit of positivity? What's your quote that inspires you?
My mantra is something I have to tell myself all the time, and that is to be still and know that I am God. Because as you can imagine, from what I've been telling you, being still isn't something I do enough of, and it's something that I need to do, because that's part of what sparks the creativity and the openness to the universe and what is coming your way and how to interpret it. So for me, I would say, even though I'm telling you to just do it, that was my first thing. For me, it's be still and know that I am God.
You know what? On that note, folks, that is awesome. Being still and taking time. My best work happens when I'm asleep. And I wake up at 3:00 in the morning and I write all those notes down, because I've allowed my brain to rest. I've processed everything I've learned the day before. I'm at rest. So I love that. You know what? And however you can get it, folks, be it meditation or sleep in the middle of the night, however you can get it. So,
or yoga
or
works too.
yoga, walking, anything you can do. Just don't walk in the multiple feet of snow that they have down in Debbie's region.
Or water.
Or water. Yes. You need a boat many days. Boat or skis right now in California, one or the other. All righty, folks. Until next time, be good to yourself. You deserve it. You do deserve it. Thank you for joining us here today at Kim Talks Resilience. I'm your host, Kim Hayden, and I'd love to invite you to our resilient community at resilientgift.com. That's resilientgift.com, and we'll send you our magazine and tickets for upcoming events and all sorts of cool things we do here. So be sure to keep watching, and you know what? Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, because we all know that sharing is caring.